Alright, so let's now look at the for each loop. And this for each loop is very useful for you looping to the array. So in this example, we saw that you can actually loop to the array by using the for next loop. Okay, if we use the for next loop or the do while loop or the do until loop, you need to know the beginning, right, bound or the lower bound, which is 0 always, to the upper bound. In this case, it will be max minus 1. You need to loop that through, and you access the array element by using the index or the subscript here. Okay, otherwise you cannot get the data out. This is very very popular, very common, which is really a great loop versus the while and do while. You need to make sure you increment your I. Okay, so I'm going to use the for each loop here to loop through this array, and then kind of do the same thing here. Okay, so I'm going to just comment this out, and I will put right in here. So the for each will look like this. For, you put the each here, okay, and then you want to, for each what, right? You want to look at each element inside the array. So if you look at the element of the array, for example, numbers. Okay, if you look at numbers, for example, if you want to loop through the numbers array, then inside the number you see that each element inside the number is really an integer type, right? So each really, so you can say for each number or for each element in the numbers, then you would read that out. So it will loop through the entire list from the 0 index all the way to the end of that list. It doesn't matter how long that list is. It's going to go all the way to the end. Okay, so you can put a variable name here. This is the variable name for that, for each single element. So if you know that it's a list of numbers, you can say for each number, right? And you can also specify the data type, because the arrays is of integer type. You can say each number as the data type of integer, and they have to match. Okay, and the array called numbers, again, just a single character makes it a difference, right? So you know the array is by convention plural, but each number is really a singular right, form. So for each number in the array called numbers, then you can print it out like this. So you can say print. Now we don't set the numbers I anymore. We just basically print the number out. So here I would just reference that the number. So now number points to the, so when the first iteration through, the number points to the first element here, prints that, so it stores the number. You will print that out, so we print it out here. It goes to the next number and prints it out. So you're not actually referencing these numbers anymore. You're actually referencing accessing the number, this temp variable name here. Okay, so that is the difference between this and the for loop here. As you can see, it's even much shorter in terms of coding. I can call this just n, right? Doesn't matter. For each n or for each I or for each x, doesn't matter, inside the numbers, then print that out. Okay, but if you put a number, then it just makes more sense. So if you have an array of students, you can say for each student and students, okay, or for each age and ages, for each person and persons, right? Makes a lot of sense that way when you put it into an English sentence. And then print that number out. So if you run this out, you would probably do the same thing with the new numbers, except that you cannot put 2 in here, right? I can't say, so notice this part here, I can combine both of them because they share the same index, I, which is convenient in this case. But for each one here, you can only do one array at a time. You can't put like and the numbers in the comma or whatever, and new numbers and so on. You can't do that. So if you want to print out the second array, you have to do it twice, or one for each. So for each you can say for each number and new numbers, then this will be fine, because this is just local to this block, local to that block, and so that should be fine. So now I get the same result, but I increase my line of code. But if you just want to iterate through one array, then for each is really useful. And if you print this out, you should get the same output as before. Well, I didn't change the result 2 here. It should be result 2, but I just added to the thing twice. So this should have been result 2. Okay. And so here we have the numbers, and then the new numbers list goes here. Okay, so it will go, it will iterate through the entire array, and if you just do this way, you can stop it. With this, you can pause. You can say from 0 to max. You can say if I is 5, then stop. You can force it to exit out. Here you can't. You don't know, right? You don't know what number it is. How do you figure out which number? Here I say when I is 5, and you can't tell. So to do that, you have to put a counter here, right? So you have to do kind of the loop thing. You can say, for example, dim count as integer. You start from 0, and then inside here for each iteration you have to say count is equal to count plus 1, right? And then you can compare. If count is 5, then stop, the exit. Otherwise you don't know where it is. And then now if you do this way, you can now track where it is through each loop. And then if you want to change the numbers based on the count, then you can now say numbers of count, and then you can do some modification or whatever it is in here, like this way. And it's doable. I mean, it's not ideal for this reason. You would use the for loop instead, but this way, if you look at this, it's almost like the do loop. Okay, so just to show you that you can still modify the actual array this way, but you have to create a counter for that to count through each iteration that you don't know where it is, and it doesn't stop. So that is one way to do that. Again, it's not ideal for this reason, but it can be done. And that's the coolest thing about programming. There's so many ways to do to achieve the same result in many different ways if you know how to do it. Okay. So the for each loop is, I just showed you how that's done, but it's not ideal for this purpose. It's basically just to loop through the array and either print that out or do some type of comparison for each number. So if you want to find out the max number in that list, then for example in the second list here, then you can say in here you could do something like a dim max num as integer, and you can send this to send it 0, assume that is the maximum number. And then here you can now say if number is greater than, if the current number, which is this one here, if it's greater than max num, if that is true, then you're going to change the max num to this new number, right? And you will iterate that through the entire list, and you get the highest number. Of course, shortcut is just new numbers dot max, but if you were to do it using this algorithm, then this is how you would do it. And you do the same thing with the numbers up here. If you want to check the minimum number, then you should say if num is less than max, then or less than min number, whatever we want to call it, then you just do it that way. Okay. So that is, yeah, so I changed that to, as you can see, I changed it to 1. So now as everything position is 1 after that first iteration. And this one here, I there's something there. All right, so that is the for each. Very simple like that. It doesn't have the step So in other words, you cannot skip something in there. It would loop through the entire list. Whereas through the for each loop, you can say here, I want to step through every other number. You put a step here, right? You can skip every other number, but inside the for each, you can't do that. Okay, so you cannot skip any number in there at all. You have to loop through the entire array. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is the splitting a string. That one is, yeah, you need to know that because that's part of the assignment. Okay, so let's do a splitting of a string, and I will leave this as is for now. And I'm going to create a new, not project, but I'll create a new form, and I'll show you this one ahead of time. When we get to the forms chapter, then we will revisit this again. Okay, so in this project, for example, I have this form called form 1. Okay, I can add a new form if I go up to the I think the tools project here, project. It says add Windows form. Okay, you see that, right? If I add Windows form, now it goes back to the beginning of where you actually almost like how you create a new application. So I want to choose Windows form, and this one says forms 2. You can change it to something else you want, but I'll just leave it as form 2. And I click add. So now I'm presented with a new form, which is look very similar to form 1, right? So this is design mode. This is 1 VB, that's the code for form 1. This is form 1 and form 2. And again, if I show my properties and my solution explorer, you'll see that they are listed here. So here's my, where's my properties? Okay, well, oops, there's something bad. Let me just resize this. Reset. Okay, so here I have two forms, form 1 and form 2. So far when you create a project, you always have with one form. I just showed you how to add another form, form 2. Okay, so form 2 is another independent form. If you notice, if you double click this, there's no code in there, right? It's called form 2. The class name is called form 2. The first one is, if you look on there, you see it says class form 1. Okay, so it's a different object. So back in form 2, and again, you just kind of move around, make sure you know on the right which one you want. But you have form 2 and form 1. So how do you know which one to run? Because right now, if I run this, you see that it only goes to the form 1. How do you jump to form 2? Okay, we'll deal with that later. But for now, instead of creating a new project, I just want to quickly create one form in here and then work on that. And to do that, basically, you would just go into the, let's see, I think in the project, let's see, project, where is it at? Team. Let me see. Project here. Project properties. Okay. Yeah. So go to project properties. So if it's not here, yeah, project properties right here, the last one. Or you can right click in the project folder and choose properties. Either way, to go here. And this screen, you'll see that it says startup form. Okay, this is the name of your project. You leave those as is, don't change those. Right here, the startup form is 1. So that's where you run this application. It always runs to form 1. Now I want to change this to form 2 because I added the form 2 here. If you added form 3, form 4, form 5, whatever it is, it will be shown up in here. So you can choose which form to be the starting form. Okay, so now I'm just going to switch over to form 2 so that it will run on the new form, just to show this new demo here. So save, and you can close this now. So now I want to run this. I have both forms. Want to run it. It should now choose form 2 instead of form 1. Okay. So now I can do just like I did before. I can design this form 2 just like the way I did before. Again, I'm going to change this to the center position. And this form here, I'm going to add a text box. Okay, text box in here. We'll put a text box here. Give it a name of txt input. Very simple. I'll change its size, make it a little bit bigger, maybe again 20. Okay. And then now we're going to add a button in here. I should call this, well, what size 20? This is just a btn. I'll call it split. Okay, I'm going to split the strings. So the text will be just split string. And what I mean split is that I'm going to split it into an array. So you read a string of text here, and you're going to split it by using a special character as a separator. We call that a delimiter. Or you can use a space, or you can use a comma, or a special character, semicolon, or another strings, like 2, 3 strings characters. It doesn't matter which one you use. So when I click the split, and then I'm going to put the output into a list box. So you put the list box down below, and we'll split that into its own words, and we'll put the words down here. So this list box will be again just LST or result. So this list is completely independent of the other list. Even though I have the same name, it shouldn't matter because it's a completely different form. Okay. And I changed the name to result. I will also change the font to 20. Okay. So if I put, for example, the word Visual Basic is cool, then we'll have Visual Basic is cool, right? 3 separate words and 3 separate elements in the array. Okay, so save this. And I'm going to double click on the button here to load the code view. I'm going to turn this off. I don't need this part here for now. This is just the preload. So inside this button, I'm going to read from the form. So let me close the first one. I don't need this anymore for now. So I'm going to read from this string here. Okay, so we're going to declare a variable. We'll just call it str for string as a string. And I'll read that directly from the txt input.text. Okay. Actually, you know what? Before we do this, I'm gonna change this. I'm gonna say it will store the word, VB is cool, right? I just put that here. And so it has a string, VB is cool. What I want to do is I want to split the string so that the word or the characters VB, the word is, the word cool, is stored inside an array of that many elements, which is 3 elements, right? And you can't just say, them string or a new string array as, equal to string. You can't do that. So we use this split function, and to do this, you would declare a variable of the array, which is say a new string array. Okay, we don't know the size of the array because this string can be has a varied size. So we'll just leave that blank and we say add string. We'll assign that to the string that we're going to split it. Okay, so if you look at this function here, you have 6 options. I mean, again, to show, just to show to get there. It's a string, which is this string here. I'm going to split the string and then use the split. Okay, if you do that, it will show you 6 options. If you cycle through this here, 6. This one here has a parameter array separator as a character and as a string, and so on. So you have like there's 6 different ways how to do that. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to split this string, and I'm going to split it at using a special character to so you have to know what you are trying to split. So if it, in this case, I'm going to use the space character as my delimiter, okay, my separator, right? So every time when it reads a character, it would cut off here, stop here, then save this part to the array, and it goes to the next word. As read that, okay, here's the next occurrence of the space character, cut that off, and they put this into a next array element. And you keep doing that to the end of the string. Okay? If you need help, it's also inside the book on, I think it's on page like 305. Okay? So that's where you would use that. So inside here, you would use like a space character, a single space, that's what it means. If it reaches a single space, if it reads that single space, then use that as the separator and split the string from there. And you just put a little C after that, just to show that it's a single character. If you use like a comma, like this, then here instead of a white space, you put a comma. For each comma, if it finds a comma, use that as a separator, and then the word before that would be split and added into the array element as a value. Okay, so depending on what the character you put here. So for now, I'm going to use just the space, which is one of the most common ones. Okay, so when I do this, what happens behind the scene is that, as you can see, it's going to look at the string, and the first occurrence, split that, it will store VB into this new string here. So what happens is that behind the scene you have new string of index 0 will store the value of VB, the first occurrence. Okay. After that, then we will move to the next string, which is string of 1, and now that will store the value of IS, and then it will do that X number of times depending on the length of that string. Okay, and then we have the word cool, and then it ends there. That's what really happens behind the scene. And also that's why you don't specify the size here. And it's the same thing as you were reading this from a text file or from a database. You don't put the size here because the size varies. Okay. So now I can go ahead and then loop through the string, the new string array. Right? So how do you get the size? Well, you can do that. You can say dim max as integer, just like we did before. This will be assigned to the new string dot count, right? You do count -1 or get upper bound 0. That is the maximum of the index. And now you can loop through the array. You can use those 2 options, right? So the other one will be like, for example, you can say for I as integer is 0 to equal 0 to max, and then we'll print out to list box list result dot items dot add, and then we'll add the new string of I, right? If you do this way, you need to know you do that. Or you can do the other way. If you do the other way, you don't really care about the dim max. You don't really care because you already know that for each, right? For each s, you can say or string, and s string, and the new string array, and then you just basically add that to the results items page. Okay. So either way is fine. So you can see that this is probably much shorter. I don't have to care about the maximum. Okay, so we could like comment this out, and we use that, which is much quicker. All we do is just basically we'll loop through the array, print everything to the list box. And before we do that, you could also want to output the string here, so you could say lst results .items .add. I want to just add the string, so we see the original string here, right? And then we also put a blank line, maybe a separator, to show that the new string is, when you split the string, you get those into separate words as shown below. Okay, so let's see if this works the way we expect. Okay, so again, I'm not going to put anything here yet. After this, we'll read it from the text box here. We'll do some changes in there. For now, you see that VB is cool. This is the original string. We split it into 3 elements because we know that there are 3 words in there. And here we have each of those elements are inside the array VB is cool. Okay, so you can split it this way, and then you can now do a lot of things with it. You can manipulate, you can change, you can check each word in the array and the string to see if it contains a certain word or one not. Okay. Okay, so now let's do this by now reading from these list box here. I mean a text box here instead. So instead of using this as a constant string, we'll read this from the text box. So txt input dot text. The only thing is that you have to set a rule as to what character you need to use as a separator. So for now, I will use the white space as the default. But you can say, tell the user, if you are giving this out to a user, say, write a sentence and then separate each word with a comma or with a special symbol or a pipe symbol or something to kind of separate that. If you don't do that, then of course you can choose any special character you want. For now, we'll just default to this white space. So save this and run this now, and I'll enter a string. I'll say puppies are cutest, right? If I do that, then it should split the strings into 3 elements and put that in the words in the array. So again, it takes every characters other than a white space. Okay, even if I put like extra white spaces in here, you'll see that it retains those white space, because every white space it counters, and then it copies the next one, which is a white space. It finds the next space, and you keep adding that, so we have a lot of white spaces in here. Okay, so let's run this again, and let's just say that now I want to use a comma instead of a white space. So you put a comma in here, and then now when you run this, it should be a comma. If you put a comma, then there's none. If you put like VB is cool, then it will treat this as a single word or a single element because there's no comma. And you can see that VB is cool because there's no comma there, right? I would say VB is cool, and so is Java. So now I have 2 elements because I have 1 comma here. I'm going to split this into 1 group, and then the rest go into a second group. So now I have 2 separate elements. Okay. And if you put like a comma after this and a comma after this, now I have 4. So if you run this now, you see that it now has 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Let me see if I change this to like an it's an S, and maybe not S. What is a string? Let's see. If I put, like, for example, OO like that. Wait. There's a way you can also change. Maybe I don't remember. Yeah, I think it's a S. What is that thing? Yeah, I can't remember. You can actually pick and choose not just one character, but multiple characters, and add that. Let me let's see if that's if that works. So we'll say VB is cool. Okay. Yeah. So it would split between the OO, and then you can see that it used the OO as the separator instead of the space. So it breaks that, and you can see that it breaks into the L out of that. So if you put an OO here, if you're like stool is nice to have, right? And it will break between STO, break that into two separate words, and so this STOO, and you have a white space because you have OO here and blank space. And then so you remove every OO or every character, any character you put in here, and it will not include that inside the array. Okay, so if you wanted to use, for example, a comma in a space, then it will have to match this pattern. Once it matches pattern, then it will split it from there. If you use a single character, you put that here. I think I put it here earlier, but I think you might have to do that. You could just leave it out. It should still be fine. Let's see if that's true. ATC. Yeah, so it was split after that special character. Okay, so that's how you split a string and then put into an array, so that you can now manipulate the array for whatever purpose. And the reason why I show you this is because of the assignment for this part. Okay, so what else I need to go over here? So passing arrays to a function or procedure. Okay, let's do that.